Hey everyone, it's the Brannan Racing Podcast. Today I got a couple of conversations with my friends. First up is a conversation between my friend and former boss, Scott Bryant. We went to Star Speedway last week in Epping and saw some modified racing and Granite State Pro Stocks action. We talked a little bit about the Chicago Street Course race for NASCAR. It was the first street course race that they've ever had. And then in the second segment, I talked to my other good buddy, Evan Pratt, who was actually in attendance at the Chicago Street Course race, and we get his perspective, his boots on the ground look at that. So, a couple of good conversations here. Now, bear with me because I hadn't done this in a while, and I kind of messed up the audio with between Scotty and I. I tried to fix it as much as I could to equalize it, but it is what it is. So if it's too much, just skip ahead to the second part with Evan, but we got it fixed. So next one will be better. All right, enjoy. Here's my conversation with Scott. Hey, what's going on, Scott? How you doing?
Good, buddy. How about yourself?
Awesome. So you and I were at Star Speedway in Epping, New Hampshire, last Saturday. That was what was that? June 30th, July 1st. July 1st, the calendar tells me, for a modified, like it's kind of an open modified show, right? Racing guys,
Yes.
and also Granite State Pro Stock Series, along with some of the other Star divisions. Um, what did you think of the show? First off,
I thought it was a good show. I really appreciated it. I enjoyed the full field of modifieds, 26 to 28 cars. The Pro Stocks, even though the field seemed a little bit light, to me, put on a decent show. It was reasonably well run. Great crowd.
yeah. You and I talked a little bit before we started here that we were kind of worried that the crowd was a little thin at the beginning. Of course, you and I got there relatively early because I like to go in the pits and walk around a little bit, but it did seem like it was kind of light at first, but I think it did a pretty nice job filling in by the time the features ran.
Yeah, I have to agree. I've seen some pictures of it since because you and I were over in the pit stands.
Mm-hmm.
And due to Canada wildfires and whatever, we couldn't really see over there very well. But
Yeah.
I've seen some pictures since, and that grandstand over on the front stretch was packed pretty good. It seemed like there were a lot of people there, which is great.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the wildfire smoke between the humidity and the haziness and the smoke and the race, fumes and stuff. Legitimately, I said I nudged you during the mod feature when it was dark. You couldn't. I literally could not see the top of the grandstand over on the front stretch, and it's not a big track, so it was definitely hazy. Um, so as you mentioned, the Pro Stock race did have what, a 12 car field.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought I do did they go I think they went caution free, right? I don't think they had any yellows. I think they ran the whole thing. Do you remember?
It was clean and green, I believe.
Yeah. So, kudos to them for that. Definitely. I thought the racing was fine. Would have been nice to see a few more cars. I'm not sure where, I haven't followed Granite State that close this year, but I'm not sure where some of the other regulars were, but um I thought it was pretty good race regardless. But the modified feature was dominated by Todd Patnode, the 24 car. He started right up front, right?
Yes. Yeah. In the front row, I believe. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, everything was good. I thought the race was pretty competitive. We didn't see a ton of. I don't think we really saw a lot of racing for the lead. I think Patnode had him pretty much covered, but um, we got to talk about Matt Hirschman, man, right?
Yes.
Yeah, as always. He was fast as usual, but he spent a lot of time towards the back. But as usual, he was there at the end when it counted, and about took it from Pat Node, but what didn't quite get there, which we'll talk about in a minute, how that went down. But um, we had quite a pile up towards the end. What was it, with 30 to go? It was a 100 lap race. I think it was around lap 70. We had that big wreck in turn 4.
Yes. Yes. There was what 3, 4, 5 cars involved. It tore up a bunch of cars.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody saw it online, but there was a couple photos that people had posted of basically you had two cars that had gotten together. I don't remember exactly how it transpired, but you had two cars that were on the ground kind of like this, and then you had a third car that was like perched on top of them in the middle.
Yeah.
And it took quite an effort to get them separated because of the way that the wreck was, but they got it cleaned up. And the rest of the I was worried that, as always, that you're going to get a big rash of cautions after that. You got 20, 30, down 15-10 to go. We've seen a bunch of times where cautions breed cautions, and that wasn't really the case. I think we had one or two more, but it wasn't a wreck fest. I think we actually lost a lot of cars. You and I had mentioned that the field had dwindled down quite a bit.
That last pileup claimed a few cars, and the interesting thing was, I think you nudged me and said, "Hey, look," because like you had mentioned, Matt Hirschman was kind of quiet. You didn't really see him much, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, they're gonna go green with just a Saturday night feature worth of laps to go, and here he is lining up 8th, and we just said, "Here it goes,
Yeah.
Here he is, man."
Yeah. How many times have we seen that though? There with tri-track races and stuff, he's just you got to tip your cap. I mean, he's the best at it. Just saves his stuff, and then at the end, whether it's 10 to go, 20 to go, 40 to go, whatever, at some point you see him start methodically moving forward, and then by the end of the thing, he's right there battling for the lead. He's a master at it.
And oftentimes it's a different technique. I mean, just happened some good fortune went his way. And other times it's well planned out and it went according to plan. It's just neat that he has an uncanny way for being a big factor at the end of these races.
Yeah, you're right, because we had spoken about it at the time that if he didn't get that yellow when it did, of course I'm sure a few of the cars that didn't make it back obviously helped him gain some spots too, but if it didn't fall where it did, I don't think that he's getting back up towards the front where he ended up.
I don't think so. I agree with you.
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, a lot of times it's by plan. Sometimes like this is just the fortuitous caution that falls at the right time somehow, and he is in the mix. And obviously he's fast. Obviously he's really, really good. Yeah. So yeah. So I mean, he's on the list every time. Every time we're there, it's like you expect him to win. So for him not to win this one was kind of I don't want to say a surprise, but you kind of go in with an expectation that he's going to find a way to pull it off, and he about did. So, yeah.
To me, you got to tip your cap to Todd Patnode. He's won there before, but perhaps he put up one of the fastest qualifying laps, and he led the whole damn thing. He was good.
Yeah.
He never pitted, so he had the same set of tires.
Right.
No adjustments. He led the whole thing.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that part of it. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
All right, so I have to refresh my memory a little bit because now we're about a week out from that. But do you remember anything else happening from the Star divisions? I know we had the 6-shooter race. Those guys, actually, I do remember. I got to say, I got to tip the cap to those guys because they had a 30-lap feature, I believe, and they ran caution-free, and it was pretty competitive. And we've seen plenty of times where those races, me as a former driver of one of those, you've seen that they can become a mess. So there's some hackage going on out there sometimes, but they did a great job. They kept it clean, and I thought they put on a good race. So kudos to them.
I liked the hand that Jenna the Jet, I believe her last name is Bulio.
Yeah.
In the E7 car, I believe. She did a wonderful job and came up and finished second. And she really seems to be a fan favorite. She got a wonderful hand. It's good to see the sportsmanship and the camaraderie that exists within that division, and how the fans even actually realized that, hey, that was pretty cool. They ran 30 laps, green, no trouble, green. It was really cool.
Yeah, definitely. I know I've never met her personally or anything like that, but I have seen her name a lot, and I know she does well. So hope she keeps that up. Otherwise, they had the Bandoleros were there. There was a handful of those. So I think they ran clean and green too, but there's a lot of space out there. I think they had like 6 or 7 of them, but they did a good job too.
Yes, indeed. I was surprised at I don't want to say how fast they were, but they carried more speed than I thought they would because they're just like Briggs and Stratton engines, but they were getting around there pretty good.
Yeah, we spoken about that at the time when I don't think they had the transponders working, so they had the lap times up, but I timed them on my phone, and they were running faster than the 6-shooters lap times, so definitely getting around there pretty good. And what division am I forgetting? Who else ran? Oh, Classic Lights.
There was an incredible field of legends.
Yes. It was, yep. Yeah. It was 30 plus.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. Those weren't the Northeast
No.
Classic. There was another field of legends cars.
Yep. You're right.
That was a full field, and they did a great job. And they get around there good.
Yeah, I don't recall there being a yellow in that one either. Come to think of it, do you?
If there was, we'll have to look it up.
Yeah, I don't. If it wasn't like a big wreck or anything like that. So
it wasn't any hackage.
Right. So yeah, I think actually now it's starting to come back to me as we're talking about it. But I think that the night as a whole was pretty good as far as everybody did their part and raced hard and put on a pretty good show.
It was well attended, which is great to see.
Yeah.
I always like to see stands full at these smaller tracks.
All right, so we can move. Actually, before we move on, I'm looking at this right now on the screen. Actually, I know you can't see it, but I got the view counter up, and I'm not doing this live, so it just says 0. So I should have changed it. Actually, you know what? I think I could take it off right now. So if anybody's watching this and paying attention, you see the view count go away. There it goes. All right, now we feel better about ourselves. All right, so also what happened this weekend, as you know, is the first street race in NASCAR history. The NASCAR Cup Series and the Xfinity Series kind of ran on the streets of Chicago, Grant Park, around Buckingham Fountain, and all the other cool stuff going on there in downtown Chicago. And coming up in the next segment, I will talk to our good pal, the third member of the Eastern 3 group, Evan Pratt, who actually was in attendance at the Chicago street race. So the next segment, him and I will get into the nitty-gritty of his experience. So looking forward to that. But I know you said you had a chance to watch some of it. What were some of your impressions on NASCAR's first street race, and of course the somewhat surprising win of Shane Van Gisbergen?
I thought it was great. I'd love to see the fans. Like, it seemed like the whole place was cheering for that guy. They loved it. Man, he put on a show. He was good. I guess because I'm not familiar with the name, it like surprised me. Because usually the ringers only do so good, right?
Yeah.
This guy seemed good. And like you had mentioned at one point, the backdrop was just breathtaking at times. Seeing the buildings in the background was like, man, what's going on here? It was really cool.
Yeah.
And then the switching between the slicks and the rain tires and who did it when, and there was some strategy that went into all of that, which I thought was good fodder for the show. I thought it was good. I liked it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I thought everybody did a good job. I think that of course NASCAR was dealt quite a tough hand with the rainfall. If you didn't see it, I did see some things that said on average in July, for the month of July in Chicago, the average rainfall is about 4 something inches. And over that less than 20, well, let's say call it 24-hour period from when the Xfinity race was halted on Saturday afternoon until Sunday afternoon when the Cup Series did get going, there were parts of Chicago, I don't know about right there, but there were parts of Chicago that were reporting over 7 inches of rain in that 24-hour period. I mean, there was serious flooding, like actual flooding in the city. I saw some pictures of there was a police SUV, like a Durango, that was right up to the door, stuck in flood
Oh man.
in Chicago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, NASCAR was up against like a once in a whatever 100-year amount of
Yeah.
rainfall, and I think they came out of it really really good. I mean, for a while in that period, it looked like the weekend could be a total dud, and I'm really interested to see Evan's perspective on this, because all the concerts that they're supposed to have, these big concerts, the Chainsmokers, Black Crows, Charlie Crockett, Miranda Lambert, supposed to do big shows Saturday and Sunday, and they all got canceled. And there was some stuff during the Xfinity race where people from the city, from the parks department or whatever, like told everybody that they had to leave, having to do with the their weather policy, that the park gets shut down if there's extreme weather like lightning, which is why the race was stopped in the first place. So there was some confusion there. Like there was a lot of stuff going on that could have made this a big issue, but they pulled through, and I think by the end of it, you saw how interested the fans were and how excited they were, and especially with the story of, like you said, with SVG, driving through the field there at the end, and getting it done. I think it was a phenomenal weekend for NASCAR.
I agree wholeheartedly. It was great to see, and you have to just imagine they're going to do more of that kind of thing, I would think.
Yeah, I think that NASCAR is fully in on the Chicago deal. I know they have a 3-year contract. The problem or the controversy there is that the contract was signed while the previous governor, or mayor, Lori Lightfoot, was in office, and now there's a new mayor by the name of Brandon Johnson, who, the city has the opportunity to cancel the contract. So it's not a sure thing that it'll be back next year or the year after. I think what I've read and heard is that there's a 180-day window. So it's basically like by the start of the year they have to either commit to or cancel the contract. So we won't, I guess, technically know for sure that it's going to happen until the beginning of next year. But I'm sure NASCAR plans to be there, and I think everybody's really hopeful to go back, because I think it worked better than what everybody expected, and was well received. And I think a lot of the actual citizens of Chicago, I think some of them that were maybe against it, I think after what they saw, I think a lot of them seem to have a more favorable output. So hopefully the local government doesn't shut it down and we get a chance to run it back. But with the amount of interest in it, and some of the viewership numbers that came out this week, I wouldn't be surprised. I really hope they don't overdo this, but I wouldn't be surprised if they try to do, let's say 2 street course races going forward, because of the impact that it's have. I really hope they don't bite off more than they can chew and oversaturate this thing. But I think I'd be okay with 2 if you want to do the one in Chicago and then maybe another one rotating. But I definitely think that now that we've seen that this can be done, I think a street course definitely belongs on the schedule for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Agreed.
Yeah. So as far as SVG, did you have any? Did you even know of the name Shane Van Gisbergen before this weekend?
I did not. I had no idea.
Yeah, so he's a 3-time Supercars champion in Australia. He's from New Zealand. I know. I heard him on a podcast earlier in the week, actually before the weekend, and he was joking and saying that people over here call him Australian. He's like, which is kind of an insult, but whatever. It's just like joking, good natured, but yeah, he's from New Zealand. I think he's 5th all time in Supercars wins. He's got like 80 wins down there. So he's one of the best, and his name, I've seen his name for, I'd say at least the last 5 years out of the Supercars stuff that I've seen, and everybody's like regarded him highly and said that he's one of the guys that they would love to see in a Cup car, and obviously we got to see the results of that. I do think that he was without a doubt the fastest car this weekend. But I do think I listened actually earlier today to the NASCAR and NBC podcast, and Jeff Burton was pointing out that he was aided by a few things. And like Burton said, not to take anything away from what he did at all. He was clearly the best guy all weekend. But we ran single file restarts all day, which cut down on the BS and the chaos because they weren't trying to go into turn 1 too wide. I think that helped. This is for the show in general too. Like helped it not be, you know what, but
Yeah.
the single file restarts, and then obviously his experience on street courses and in the wet, I think definitely helped him a ton. And obviously he had a fast car. He had a fast car with Trackhouse, and they've won 2 in a row now after Chastain won in Nashville.
I'd like to comment on a couple. And my wife mentioned this to me, and we talked about, wow, what's really cool about this is when he drove the stock car, the 91 car, he's on the opposite side of the car that he's usually on. The shifter is on the different side, and they have windows in the cars. So that's 3 like big things like that could really affect your concentration or throw you off. And he adapted to it like a duck to water. He was great.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to me has got to be that shifter. I can't imagine. I mean, I'm sure you'd figure it out, right? But I can't imagine shifting in a competitive environment with my left hand, doing it backwards for us. I just feel like I wouldn't have the feel. Like it would just feel wrong.
In the opposite side of the car.
Yeah. I feel like that would be easier to get used to than having to use your left hand for shifting, in my opinion. But
yeah.
But then again, yeah.
He overcame all of it. I mean, the windows being open, he said, was kind of odd.
Yeah. I remember them mentioning that because those cars, the doors function on those cars. When they get out, they open the door. Like the door swings open like a normal car. So yeah, a lot different. I like to watch some of those clips sometimes. I don't ever get to watch them live. I don't think there's any way other than maybe some sort of a paid subscription thing to watch them here in the States. But I've seen some clips of some battles, some of them involving him, and man, those guys do get after it. They're awesome down there. So I love that. So real quick, I guess before we wrap any of this up, next week we're going into Atlanta for the NASCAR guys. Talk about the Cup Series specifically, which now has been turned into a drafting track after they reconfigured it. What are your thoughts about them reconfiguring Atlanta into a more super speedway-esque track rather than repaving it normally?
I don't know. I go back and forth about it. I kind of like the very first version, just a large oval. It was super fast, and I'm a softie for what it was, and then they made like that D-shaped configuration. Now this. Mm-hmm. And I hear a lot of people kind of stewing about this current configuration. I mean, the drivers and crews don't seem to like it. I don't mean to put thoughts and words in their mouth, but I've heard them the configuration. But I tend to favor the old oval before they refigured any of it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I that was a little before my time. I think it was reconfigured in '97. So I never watched a race there from the old configuration. I mean, I was alive. I was born in '94, but I wasn't watching races then. But I've of course seen clips of it. But yeah, I think it's too bad with how good that this next gen car has been on mile and a halves and intermediates. I think it's been surprisingly good. And I don't think that there was confidence that they were going to put on a good race on a freshly paved mile and a half when it was reconfigured before the new car. And I got to think that had they known that the car was going to be this good on mile and a half, I think that they would have went ahead and just repaved the thing. But that's out of the bottle now anyway. So
yes,
it is what it is. And maybe we'll see a surprise winner. I know we had, what was it last year that LaJoy almost won and ended up trying to throw that mega block at Chase Elliott and didn't work out for him. So
it's restrictor plate too, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's that type of. They don't run the typical restrictor plates anymore, but at any of them. But yeah, in effect, it's what it is.
They've cut the power. They've cut the power down somehow.
Yeah, so they definitely, it's definitely a pack race. So, but the thing is with the tighter radius corners and stuff, and the track's not as wide as Daytona and Talladega. It seems like it's a much more track position dependent race. So it seems like it's important to qualify up front and try to stay up there because there's just not the space out there to try to come from the back. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but we'll see.
Yeah, we sure will.
All right, so you and I are planning to be back at Star Speedway around the end of the month, right, for the tri-track modified race.
Yeah. July 22nd. 10 grand to win again, I believe.
All right, so if we don't have you on here until then, we'll get you on after that, and we can talk about that.
I'll be looking forward to it.
All right, man. Good to hear from you as always.
Likewise. Take care, pal.
All right, thanks. So that was my conversation with Scott. Now we're going to jump into the second segment where I discuss the Chicago street course race and his trip to Chicago with Evan Pratt. Hey, what's up, man? How's it going?
Hey, how are you?
Good. So first off, how was Chicago as a whole? Like just the city. We'll get into the race in a second, but how was the trip?
The trip was great. The city was great. People were nice, like everywhere you went. But the city's so spread out. Like it's a massive. I mean, it's the third biggest in the U.S. It's basically common knowledge that it's a massive city. So we really would need more like another long weekend to like really kind of get to see and do a lot of things. Our Airbnb was kind of in a location where it was in the part of the city where like a lot of office buildings were, so it kind of after 5 p.m. not a lot going on.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was kind of weird. The city's kind of laid out like that, and they have like the neighborhoods is where you have like some nightlife, the restaurants and bars and things to go to. But overall, definitely great. I'd love to go back.
So obviously the race was affected by weather. How much of your trip was affected by weather?
Um, the trip itself was fine. We flew in, no delays. We flew out, no delays. So like in getting to and from the airport, like it wasn't really an issue. But as far as the weekend went, the Xfinity race on Saturday night was delayed by lightning. It started to sprinkle a little bit while we were there. And then eventually we left because they were kind of making people leave. And then we eventually got word it was going to be Sunday morning. And then that kind of brings me right into what happened Sunday. A massive amount of rain on Sunday morning. We thought at first it was through 12, then it was 2. We kept checking. It was 4 o'clock. Then it was 5. The next thing you know, it said 7.
Yeah.
And overall, they got in parts of the city, they got like 7 inches of rain in like
Yeah.
18 to 20 hours.
Yeah, that's
Crazy.
absolutely wild. Before we
Yeah.
move into some of the racing stuff, since you were there, I was reading on Twitter about that the park service or whatever the people that run the parks were like essentially kicking people out. Did you have an experience with that? Because from what I
Hmm.
understand, the park has its own rules for extreme weather where if there's lightning and stuff, they make people leave the park, and this was no different.
Yeah, so I didn't know this ahead of time. I read this on Twitter afterwards, and I was like, kind of, it made sense after that.
Mhm.
But I wasn't really sure where people were supposed to go. You just exit the venue and then you're just out in the streets. And it's almost really no difference than just standing in the park. Um, I mean, you're kind of in a wide open area in that way, but I don't know. It's lightning; like you can't really predict it. But yeah, I did to answer your question. I did kind of see that a little bit. They were kind of asking folks to leave, but it took them so long to actually start to like usher people. We were towards we were pretty close to the stage where the concerts were going to take place. So they kind of started ushering people that were furthest away from the entrance first. So it took a while for like security and like people to make their way to us. But we kind of left before we got ushered out of there. So, but I definitely saw some people getting kind of like told to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, as like you said, it's understandable, but it's unfortunate. How much did the vibe change in your opinion with the when the Xfinity race was postponed, and of course you had the cancellations of the shows and stuff? Did you notice anybody their reactions to it?
So we left prior to the like official cancellation of the concerts that were taking place after the Xfinity race. But for me, like I was, I think I might have been back at the Airbnb at that time, or maybe we were out to dinner, and I read it, and I was bummed. I wasn't necessarily, we weren't like, I don't know if we were planning on going to the Chainsmokers concert, but if the weather was nice, we would have seen the Xfinity race, and then we probably would have hung out a
Yeah.
little bit for it. And there were a lot of people that were there in the park that were there just to see the Chainsmokers. Like, they're a huge attraction. No matter where they go, they sell out pretty much no matter where they go. So I can kind of feel that for those people that showed up to this event to see the chain smokers and kind of maybe take in a little bit of what's going on around them, with the race and stuff. And yeah, I felt kind of bummed for those people, to be honest.
Yeah, that was unfortunate too. And at that, from a person who was watching this from afar, from the Xfinity postponement until the Cup race actually got started on Sunday, from afar, watching on Twitter and on the television coverage, I was feeling pretty down. I was like, oh man, this is ruined. This is like
Yeah,
everybody's upset. Like it's not
it
good.
didn't look good.
Yeah, people are, asking about refunds and what are they gonna do and
Yeah,
all this other stuff. And I'm like, oh no, what a massive headache for NASCAR and just a crazy rain event that caused this. But I think that a lot of it was saved by the Cup race getting in, and then obviously the race that we had. Again, we'll get into that, but
yeah,
the racing was good, and I think that it bought a lot of good vibes and goodwill by the end of
yeah,
the event. But for a
yeah,
while,
for sure.
I was feeling like, oh no, this
Yeah,
sucks.
yeah. So in the morning, we made our way down there. Um, we were just like, let's just walk towards the event, and maybe the rain will clear off at some point, and then they can get it going, at a decent time. There was obviously things for us to do in Chicago. We took a ride down to the Museum of Science that day, just to kill some time. Made it in and out of there just in time for, like, there was a mad rush of people. That place was so busy when we left. So we got in and out of there and kind of just headed back towards the event. Um, we were looking for, just some shops and stuff to go in. And that's when it just, like, it all hell broke loose. The rain went from moderate to heavy, and it like stayed like that for hours and hours. And yeah, we got kind of down on it. We just didn't really see any end in sight, the way that the weather was kind of behaving. I personally thought at some point, maybe around 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that race was going to have to happen on Monday.
Yeah, it was looking like that for quite a while. Before, again, I've said this 3 times. Before we get into the actual race,
Before we get to the race,
before
yeah.
we get to the racing, I'm most interested in your experience there because Scotty and I talked about the race a little bit, and you and I will as well. And I'm sure that anybody that would be watching this probably
You
familiar
you
with the race.
caught more of the race than I did, probably.
True, and that's another thing I'm
So
going to ask you about.
yeah,
But what
yeah,
I'm most interested in is your boots on the ground type. Like, I want to hear more about the vibes. I want to hear more about like the people that were around. Like, how
yeah.
much of a sense did you get of people who were taking in their first event? And then on the flip side of that, did you notice a lot of seasoned NASCAR fans? Did you notice people that look like they've done this before, or what was the ratio
Yeah,
like?
yeah, for sure. So there's definitely your regulars, probably your people that attended Chicagoland when that was on the schedule,
Hmm.
um, and then definitely probably some people that were just kind of curious about it, but were also, they had to travel, kind of like us. We're seasoned veterans, and we were just like, we're gonna go there. Let's just go do this too.
Hmm.
But it started right when we got there. We were in the elevator heading to our Airbnb to check in. And there was a person in the elevator, and they just were like, there was two people behind us actually, and one person was like, "Wow, there's a lot of people in town," and they were like, "Oh, it's probably NASCAR." And then they were like just casually chatting about checking it out, and I was like, I got off the elevator, and I was like, "That was cool."
Yeah.
Like, and they were like just two random people, like kind of dressed up like this is kind of a nice building.
Yeah.
And they were like totally about it. I never heard one negative thing all weekend about it, and there were tons of people there that were there for the first time. Just a lot of curiosity, and I never heard anything negative about it all weekend, which is great.
That's incredible. That's great to hear.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah,
what I've heard from, like, I've listened to a bunch of podcasts this week because the response has been so favorable that I've frankly loved hearing about it. And
yeah,
anybody that spoke, I've listened to Jeff Burton on the NBC podcast and listened to the Dale Jr. Download. TJ Majors was on there. And yeah, obviously Dale Jr. and them. They were talking about their experiences, and it was the same thing. Nobody said anything negative. Everybody was like super into it, and people were like, I've never been into this. I've never cared about it at all, but
yeah,
we came to check it out, and wow, that was great. I was
yeah.
excited. So
Yeah,
so
I'm
cool.
sure you saw the video. It was on social media. There was a lot of people that were there for their first time.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like NASCAR NBC like had this compilation of people that were just like going to it because it was right in their backyard, basically.
Yep.
I listened to an interview with Dale Jr. From Friday, so this was pre-event weekend and everything, and he was basically comparing Chicagoland to basically having it in the park, and how different that would be for the people in the city that live right there. For them to just walk to the event, take the subway or take the metro, whatever it may be. How nice that is, rather than it be 45 minutes out of the city. So
Yep.
it was just he made a really good point there with that. That it's just much more easy for certain people to attend. And Chicago's such a heavily traveled city anyway. Like anyone that did, drive or fly or whatever it may be, getting to the city, even with all those people, it's built for it. So transportation could have been a lot worse. So yeah, it was great.
That's awesome to hear. So all right, let's talk about the race. How much of the race did you see, and how many times did you relocate? And what was it like being in a street course environment? Sense of speed. The sounds.
Yeah.
How could you compare it to what the places you've been, Loudon, Pocono? And did you notice the cars, the mufflers? Did you notice that they were quieter with the mufflers?
So I think I did a little bit, but I still use my earplugs because they still were pretty loud. Are they using the mufflers? They're not using those at Loudon, I'm assuming.
No, they were used for the Clash, and then I guess they were modified a little
Okay.
bit for this event because I don't know if you remember, they were talking about excessive heat during the Clash, and it wasn't
Yeah.
that hot there, and there was some concerns about them being really hot this weekend. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not like it was that hot because it was raining, but um,
Wasn't there? Didn't somebody have a fire at the Clash? Was that due to that?
I think there, I
I
think there
think there
might have
was
been like
one.
a
I
rubber
think there was
buildup
one.
fire. Yeah,
Yeah, I wasn't. Yeah, you said mufflers and heat buildup, so I wasn't sure if that was kind of the cause of that. But
yeah.
yeah, I didn't really notice the mufflers too much. I'm sure if I make it to Loudon, that I'll probably notice it there since I
Mm,
was just in Chicago.
right.
Um, but yeah, they were still pretty loud, thunderous and everything, kind of their normal sound.
Yeah.
But what was different was the vantage point. You kind of, for me, the ticket that I bought was general admission plus, and it really got me, eye level material. I didn't have access to any type of grandstand or anything like that. Those tickets were just kind of out of my price range, but
Mm,
people bought them, so.
yeah.
Um, so that kind of gives you the sense of speed, though, which is cool. So we were kind of posted up between 5 and 6 on that long straightaway, and then between 3 and 4 a little bit on Saturday, and that was definitely the highest speed that they achieved on the track.
Mm,
We kind of stood right before that curve right at the very end of the straightaway, and you could definitely like see that they were like booking it through there.
Yeah.
And the other difference was them just constantly ripping through the gears. Like that's not something that you necessarily can hear at ovals when they're all in the same place. Even though with the sequential gearbox, they do a fair amount of shifting on ovals now.
Mm-hmm.
At the street course, you definitely notice that a lot more.
So, that was your first road or street race, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was.
So, what's your opinion on that type of racing compared to an oval? Is that something that you would want to check out more? You know, a place like the Glen or whatever, or like obviously the
Yes.
experience is different that you can walk around and stuff. What are some of the
Yeah.
pros and cons of that type of racing?
So if you're a casual fan, this type of thing was great for you. The whole festival and events and things going on within the race.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That's great for them. For me, I want to see the race, and the ticket that I bought just didn't really get me that type of entertainment value that I'm seeking. Um, but I think, like you mentioned, the Glen. I'd love to go to Watkins Glen, and I would just buy a ticket for a section of the track where I can sit in a grandstand and I can watch that, those sets of corners the entire day. That would be perfectly fine as long as I've got my big, screen that's kind of displaying what's going on TV in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe even just my scanner with TV in my headset.
Did you have the scanner
I,
in Chicago? You didn't have the scanner, did you?
so I didn't bring it. I packed a suitcase and I was like, I don't really know if I can fit it. And then once I got to the point where the suitcase is full, if I put it in there, I was afraid I might have broke because I know they
Yeah.
throw luggage around and stuff loading the airplanes, and
Did they
I
have
didn't want it to
the
break.
racing electronics trailer there?
So I didn't see it, but I checked out the map plenty of times because I was just trying to study where things were, and I did see on the map that it was supposed to be there, but I didn't ever really lay eyes on it. The grounds were huge.
Yeah.
It's a lot bigger in person. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
It didn't. It doesn't look like when you look on Google Maps, you're like, okay, cool. There's a race in a park, and then and then you get there and you're like, okay, this is actually really huge.
Yeah. I mean that stage, the area, the field with where the stage was set up. I mean, you could see from the overhead, you had 6,
Yeah.
8 softball fields, and that they didn't even take up the whole
Yeah.
field. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That
definitely
was
a
huge.
large area.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you said you can only see little bits of the race. How much of the Cup race did you see, and what was your opinion on any of the racing going on there?
Yeah, so we, after we kind of, I didn't really write it off, but we had basically walked like 25, 30 miles at this point already between Friday afternoon, Saturday, and Sunday. Even though it rained, we walked the museum. We were kind of
Mm.
walking around, going shopping. Yeah, we had walked quite a bit, so we were just tired. We went back to kind of dry off, and we laid down and we fell asleep. And when we woke up, it was like 6:20, and at that point, getting across the city because we were kind of across the city. We were 1.7 miles from there, and it was busy. It was finally clearing off. It was Sunday evening. There was lots of people in town. It does take a while to get across the city.
Mm.
So once we got there, we were probably looking at overtime. I think we got there when overtime started,
Mm.
which is extremely unfortunate. I missed a lot of stuff, but I was kind of watching it on my phone at the same time while we were making our way there. So I was kind of keeping an eye on what was going on.
Yeah.
So I basically witnessed the best part of the race, which is fine with me, I guess. Totally our fault on missing most of it, but it was definitely worth getting back there to see what we saw because it was quite a scene.
Yeah, so let me ask you, were you familiar at all with the name Shane Van Gisbergen? I messed up the first part, Van Gisbergen. Were you familiar with him at all from any of the supercar stuff?
I know a few of the supercar names, but no, I don't think I had really. His name didn't ring a bell. But then I saw his resume with supercars, and I was like, that's pretty impressive, and this is going to be very similar. It kind of the light bulb went off in my head before practice even started. I was like, I really just like had a feeling about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't this definite thing that he was going to win type of feeling, but it was maybe he has a good run and he runs top 10 and it's a huge success, and they kind of focus on that after the race, maybe a little bit more than like the winner, because that's just cool to have a guy from another discipline like Formula One. Jensen Button was in the race as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool to have those guys in there, and it's definitely great to get them their TV time and kind of get some more eyes on the sport maybe. But yeah, so I didn't foresee him winning, but impressive what he did. I mean, regardless of being on fresh tires, I mean, his march through the field was just impressive, man.
Yeah, he was without a doubt
So
the best guy all weekend. As far as, I mean, he was fast in practice, he was faster in
yeah,
race. I mean, he was great.
consistent. He was top 5 speed in practice, and then he was what did he qualify,
Third.
third or something?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and then he was just right up there the whole day.
Yeah.
So he's to get into a car you've never actually driven before. He had some practice laps at the Charlotte Roval previous to that, but that was it.
Yeah.
Like, to get into a car that is totally different, and go out there and win against guys these guys are good. Like, these guys they're really, really good road racers now. And you don't necessarily see the ringers come in and stink up the show. And I'd say that he kind of stunk it up a little bit.
Yeah. What do you think going forward? Now that these guys from other disciplines have seen this done, they've seen SVG come in, be competitive, win a race. What do you think this does going forward? Do you think it opens a lot more doors? Because, I mean, we don't even have to look that far ahead. The Project 91 car doesn't have any more races scheduled, but I would be surprised if they don't run. I mean, I'm sure their phone's ringing off the hook right now. But coming up
Yeah.
with the Indy Road Course, 2311 is going to run that 67 car that Pastrana ran in the 500 with Kamui Kobayashi, Japanese, multidiscipline winner, former F1 driver.
Yep.
Great sports car driver. So he's going to be in the car at the Indy road course, and we'll see how he does. But if this trend continues with guys being competitive, what do you think that this does going forward as far as how guys from other disciplines view the next gen car and their opportunity to step in and be competitive?
Oh, it's definitely a positive thing. I look at it more of a positive for NASCAR in general, because you get the fans of those other disciplines to kind of peek in, even if they're just kind of peeking in at the race to see how their guy is doing from their discipline in their country. And the more people that can come in and have success in our car, in the NASCAR Cup car, the better. They're just gonna attract that many more guys, and we've got 2 teams already that are kind of they just have a rotating car that they kind of bring in once in a while, with the 91 and the 67. I wouldn't be surprised if there are more teams that do that in the future, and I think it's great for the sport. It has to be positive. And what just happened last weekend is like the ultimate positive.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's super exciting going forward. I hope that we see more current guys find a way to dip their toe in the waters over here, and not just some of the retired guys. Which nothing wrong with those guys, but if we can find a way to get some current guys in the car, that would be great. But so
yeah, I wonder who would do it. That's current in another discipline. We hear names thrown out there. Daniel Ricciardo always says, "I'd love to run." Like, but that's a guy like that would be awesome. People love Ricciardo. He's a fan favorite in Formula One, and he's not even a full-time driver right now.
Right. You think
he's a backup driver, and
Yeah.
people talk about Daniel Ricciardo all the time.
It's true.
So like
Maybe
personality like that, right? He's gotta have time. A personality like that in a one-off event like the Indy Road Course, even. It's just going to bring like the TV ratings. I mean, talk about the TV ratings from Chicago. I mean, look at those.
Yes, they were great.
It was a success all around viewership at the track and at home. So
for sure. Yeah, I'm looking forward to maybe trying to get some more of those F1 guys. We've seen Raikkonen run at Coda this year in the Project 91 car. I mean, Coda makes the most sense, right? Being a current F1 track. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, hopefully we'll see more of that.
Yeah. And there's also, maybe the potential that, NASCAR kind of reaches above to the north and maybe runs Montreal. And that's another event
happening.
that's another event that could attract, other guys to run the 91 or the 67 or, another car that potentially is looking for a guy to just fill a seat like that, maybe go for a win.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So I got to ask you about Chicago. Did you have any deep dish pizza or the Chicago dog?
I did. I did. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. So I had the deep dish. I went to Lou Malnati's because that's the place, that's the most popular place. I didn't learn this till afterwards. They're known for their sauce. There are other places around town that are known for their cheese. Thought the cheese was a little chewy, but that's just me. Overall, it had really good flavor. So maybe next time I go for a place that has a little better cheese. They're also known for their beef in general. So we were originally going to go to a steakhouse. We wanted to, treat ourselves a little bit. Mm-hmm. Steakhouse prices around there are just insanely pricey. So we went to an Italian place instead, and I got the one steak option that was on the menu. And it was like the best steak I ever had. So I was like, all right, that's fine. So I was impressed with the food overall. I tried an Italian beef. That was spectacular. Mm-hmm. And yes, I had a Chicago dog, and that was pretty good too.
Was it better than the Martinsville dog?
Yes. I was just gonna say it's way better than the Martinsville dog. Sorry, Martinsville, but the hot dog scene at Martinsville it's not attractive.
I mean, I thought it tasted pretty good. It doesn't look very good, but
no, it's a brown dog with brown slop on it.
It's definitely a slop. Yeah.
But yeah, the food is great, and I mean, we're gonna go back at some point. We just have to. There's so much we didn't get to do or see, so it's a must. Highly recommend.
Good. I'm glad it was a good time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we can wrap this up. You can stay on with me as I talk this out. Hopefully we'll get to Loudon together. We can have some material for another pod coming up. I've got a pretty full schedule going forward. This weekend I'm going to be in Oxford, Maine, helping out on the 27 NH ACT car for Cam Huntress. So hopefully we'll have a good run there. We'll have something to talk about next week. After that, Loudon weekend, potentially Lee USA on Friday. Kyle Busch is going to be there, so we'll see how that goes.
Yep.
So, some more stuff to talk about there. Week after that is Tri-Track at Star. Week after that is ACT at White Mountain, I think. No, sorry, take that back. Wheelin' Mods at Claremont. I want to get to that one. Then ACT at White Mountain the next weekend. So it's a full slate coming up. So I'm going to try to keep this rolling and pump out some content, I guess, see what happens.
Definitely.
All right. Well, until next time, I'm Greg Brannan. Evan Pratt joined us. Scott Bryant earlier. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.